Can you believe France went bankrupt not once, not twice, but 5 times in just 150 years? The same country that built Versailles, conquered half of Europe, and controlled the richest colonies on earth, couldn't pay its bills. By 1788, half of all tax revenue went to paying debt interest. The solution? Tax the wealthy. Their response? Revolution. Over 40,000 people lost their lives in what followed. This is the story of how financial arrogance destroyed an empire. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this pattern keeps repeating throughout history. Let's start with what France had. In 1700, France was the superpower of Europe. 20 million people, 4 times England's population, colonies spanning 3 continents, Haiti, Louisiana, Senegal, India. The French controlled 20% of global trade. Louis XIV built Versailles for 2 billion livres. In today's money, over $2 billion. 700 rooms, 2,000 windows, 1,400 fountains. It took 30,000 workers 50 years to complete. But here's the critical problem. France's tax system was fundamentally broken. The nobility owned 40% of the land but paid 0 taxes. The clergy owned 10% of the land and also paid nothing. That left peasants who owned just 35% of the land paying for everything. In 1700, France collected 150 million livres in taxes. England, with a quarter of the population, collected 100 million pounds, nearly the same amount. Why? Because England taxed all social classes equally. France only taxed the poor. This is the foundation of every bankruptcy that follows. You cannot run an empire on peasant taxes alone. Keep this principle in mind, okay? It totally explains everything we're diving into next. Bankruptcy number 1, 1557. Can you believe it? That's a big deal. France had been fighting Spain and the Holy Roman Empire for control of Italy for 60 years. That cost 43 million livres, a staggering sum. King Henry II Louis devalued the currency by 25%. Overnight, everyone's savings were worth a quarter less. This economic shock triggered 40 years of religious civil wars between Catholics and Protestants. 3 million lives were lost. The wars of religion devastated France far worse than the Italian wars themselves. But France learned nothing from this disaster. Bankruptcy number 2, 1598. Henry IV finally ended the religious wars, but inherited 300 million livres in debt, double the annual tax revenue. His solution: sell government positions to nobles want to be a judge. 50,000 livres. Tax collector: 30,000 livres. That's a whole lot of cash, isn't it? So, you're thinking about a military officer, huh? What's got you curious about that? 100,000 livres. This strategy raised money quickly, but created a catastrophic problem. Corruption became institutionalized. Judges who paid for their positions ruled in favor of whoever paid them most. Tax collectors kept half of what they collected. The entire system was now designed for personal enrichment rather than public service. The pattern repeats. Bankruptcy number 3, 1648. The 30 Years' War, the most destructive European conflict before World War I. France spent 1 billion livres fighting the Habsburg dynasty. The solution this time: print paper currency backed by nothing. Inflation exploded across Europe. The price of bread tripled in just 5 years. The results: the Fronde, a civil war where nobles and peasants united against the crown. Paris was besieged. The young King Louis XIV had to flee the capital. He never forgot this humiliation. That's why he built Versailles, to keep the nobles close, where he could monitor them. Each bankruptcy makes the next inevitable. Bankruptcy number 4, 1715. Louis XIV passed away and things got wild, leaving 2 billion livres in debt, twice the annual revenue. The government was paying 100 million livres per year just in interest payments. Enter John Law, a Scottish financier with an audacious plan. He created the Mississippi Company, promising investors massive returns from Louisiana's supposed gold mines. The big issue here: the gold was totally nowhere to be found. Law's company stock went from 500 livres per share to 10,000 in just 6 months. Everyone invested: nobles, merchants, even servants bet their life savings. Then, economic reality hit. There was no gold. The stock crashed 97% in a matter of weeks. Investors lost everything. Economic chaos followed. France's debt situation was now worse than before. This was history's first major stock market crash, and it destroyed public trust in paper currency for generations. But the worst crisis was still coming. Bankruptcy number 5, folks. That's 1788. Can you believe it? Wild times. France's debt had reached 4 billion livres, 4 times the annual revenue. Half of all tax money went to paying interest. Nothing remained for infrastructure, defense, or government operations. The country was paralyzed. King Louis XVI recognized the solution: tax the wealthy nobility. But he couldn't implement this alone. He needed approval from the Estates General, a parliament that hadn't convened in 175 years. When he called them in 1789, he totally messed up big time. You know, the third estate, representing 98% of the population, demanded genuine political power. When they were excluded from proceedings, they formed the National Assembly and swore not to disband until France had a constitution. On July 14, 1789, they stormed the Bastille fortress. The revolution had begun. The royal family was forced from Versailles to Paris. 2 years later, Louis decided it was time to make a break for it. So he put on a disguise and tried to sneak out of the country. He was captured, returned, put on trial for treason, and in January 1793, the monarchy ended. The 1,000-year-old institution was over. But hold on, the crisis was just getting started, and things were about to get wild. The revolution totally ate itself up, leaving chaos in its wake. What a ride. What started as a fight for equality turned into something really intense: the Reign of Terror. From September 1793 to July 1794, anyone suspected of opposing revolutionary ideals faced trial. Can you believe that over 40,000 folks in France lost their lives during this time? That's just heartbreaking. Marie Antoinette was tried and sentenced in October 1793. Former nobility, Catholic clergy, and even moderate revolutionaries who advocated for restraint met similar fates. The architect of the terror himself, Maximilien Robespierre, was ultimately sentenced in July 1794. In Paris alone, 2,600 received capital sentences in just 6 weeks during what historians call the Great Terror. The pace was relentless. But here's the crazy twist. The economy totally tanked during this whole time. The revolutionary government printed assignats, paper money backed by a confiscated church property. Within 2 years, inflation reached 300%. A loaf of bread that cost a sous in 1790 cost 225 sous by 1795. The peasants who supported the revolution, who wanted bread and liberty, were now suffering worse economic conditions than under the monarchy. Food riots erupted across the country. The same revolutionary justice that targeted nobility was now being applied to hungry citizens demanding basic necessities. By 1795, France was in complete chaos. The government was totally broke, had no power, and honestly, no real credibility. That's when a brilliant young military officer appeared and promised order through strength. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon seized power in 1799, restored governmental order, and crowned himself emperor in 1804. For 11 years, France was once again Europe's dominant power. Napoleon's military campaigns conquered Austria, Prussia, Spain, and Italy. The French Empire stretched from Portugal to Poland. But this renewed power was entirely built on continuous military conflict. The Russian campaign of 1812 proved to be the breaking point. Napoleon invaded with 600,000 soldiers, only 100,000 returned, 500,000 casualties in 6 months, lost to winter, supply failures, and military defeats. Napoleon was defeated in 1814, exiled to Elba, escaped in 1815 for the famous 100 Days, then lost decisively at Waterloo. His empire collapsed entirely. The final accounting: 6 million casualties across Europe from Napoleon's wars. France lost Haiti, Earth's richest colony at the time. Louisiana was sold to America for a fraction of its value. Most African and Asian territories were lost. The nation that once controlled 20% of global commerce was reduced to a regional European power. 5 bankruptcies. 2 centuries of financial mismanagement. 1 revolution. The Terror period. Napoleon's wars. Millions of lives lost, and France never regained its preeminent global position. The lesson: the same principle Spain learned. You cannot build sustainable power on debt, institutional arrogance, and perpetual conflict. Eventually, economic reality demands payment. So what can we learn from France's collapse? That economic fundamentals always win. That you can't tax just the poor forever. That financial arrogance leads to revolution. Over the next 5 videos, I'll break down each catastrophe in detail, from Versailles to the Terror to Napoleon's fall. Subscribe now and hit the bell, because understanding how empires destroy themselves, that's how we avoid repeating their mistakes. Part 1 drops Sunday at noon. Don't miss it.